Forward. Cool. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thrive and Survive Research Hub. I have my co-host Tineiwo here with me today. T, how are you doing?
Morning, Alex. Morning, listeners. I'm blessed, Alex. Really good and excited for another great episode. How are you doing?
No, I feel the same. I'm very pumped. I'm
Yeah.
excited. I had a great Saturday morning. I went for a run this morning, did a little bit of a workout. I'm now heavily caffeinated. Uh,
Yeah.
I needed it.
Yeah.
I really went to bed late last night. I was reading
Yeah.
a fantasy book, and it like 40 minutes just flew by. And next thing I know, it's 11:30, and I'm waking up at 5, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
geez, what have
Yeah.
I done?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see the bags under my eyes. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Not especially the normal Saturday morning.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I thought we could start by discussing the subject of how to change bad behavioral patterns and how to break habits. So I think this is a big thing. I mean, like your habits are basically your life.
Yeah.
And most of the time we're operating on autopilot, and that's where we are living our habits. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you go about breaking bad habits? And have you had experience with that? Like, have you had any bad
Yeah.
habits you had to break? And then
Yeah.
what worked for you and what didn't work for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I think, you know, to answer the question on behalf of everyone, I think everyone has bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anyone perfect enough to say I don't have bad habits, right? So I've had a lot of bad habits in my life growing up. But obviously, I think overcoming some of those bad habits had to do with a lot of self-reflection and a good analysis of what's benefiting me versus what's not benefiting me. So for me, one of my bad habits growing up was going out a lot. Like obviously going out is great and fun and all that stuff, but it has a point where it no longer serves you, where the returns diminish. And obviously going out comes with things like spending, it comes with things like drinking a lot of coffee or drinking a lot of alcohol,
Mm,
and uh, the total value that it gave back to me didn't add. And I just broke that habit by obviously identifying the fact that this wasn't going to serve me as much as I think it would,
yeah.
and realizing the fact that I could profit more by reading or spending more intimate time with my family or my friends or my parents. And through that, establish a new habit which now fuels me and charges me, right?
Yeah.
And which forms a core part of my what I call recharging system.
Mm.
So I just think it starts off with like you reflecting on your life and reflecting on things that add value. And then the things that don't add value, categorize them as bad habits.
If I can ask a
What's your
follow
formula?
before I go into mine, I want to ask you a follow-up question. So,
Yeah.
have you found that can you possibly overcorrect where you say, okay, like my bad habit was I went out too much. And so now you kind of replace that with spending more time by yourself and more time at home. Um,
Yeah.
did you overcorrect initially and then try and find like a happy balance, or what was the process there?
Yeah. A very good one, eh? So I think overcorrecting is naturally part of it, right? Because when you have a bad habit, you want to completely get it out of your system.
Yeah,
And getting it out of your system basically almost means like cutting it out.
yeah.
However, you then realize that moderation or balance is a key part of, life. And depending on the habit, you want to reflect on the overcorrection. So like if you're giving up smoking or something like that, it's great to overcorrect.
Yeah, of
You know what I'm
course.
saying? But the reality is that to give up smoking, you also need to do it gradually. It's a
Yes,
healthy way to do it, right? If you don't want to make it too difficult for yourself. So I
yes.
think it's about assessing the behavior you're trying to give up. A good example I will use here is I used to use social media a lot. I still do, but now I use it in a very beneficial way. So I actually gave it up for a year and a half and I went to China, deleted everything. And I came back into the world and I realized actually it's a bit unhealthy to live without it because the world is moving forward and running away from the realities of the world is not going to serve me best.
Yeah.
So I took the same bad habit and I now use it as a tool to read the news, to get inspiration, and to chat to some friends that I don't necessarily talk to on WhatsApp
Right.
and share knowledge and wisdom.
Right.
So I changed the bad habit into a good habit, but also the giving up of it made me realize that the world is moving and this is part of the world. So me running away from it's not gonna do anything for me. It's
Exactly.
actually gonna put me at a disadvantage. So how can
And
I
you're
live
gonna
with
go
this
back.
in a
Yeah.
healthy way?
Yeah.
And
Well,
yourself?
um, yeah, you know what? Like for me, I would say there was two habits that um I kind of had to work on. The first one was I took really long to respond to messages. Um and I yeah, like I could people couldn't reach me, you know. And
Yeah,
um I just realized how it was making people feel, you know, me taking so long to respond. And it's not like I didn't have time. I just wasn't making it a priority in my life.
yeah,
So the way I changed that was first, I trying to understand the impact of this habit on not just myself, but also the people that I care about. And then making it a priority to improve on that and working on it and
yeah,
just being deliberate with it, being like,
yeah,
okay, I see this person send me a message. Let me take 5 minutes later on in the day and put some effort into a response, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
just raising
yeah.
my standards of what I expect of myself.
100%, 100%,
Situation.
100%.
The second one I would say was I used to be really hard on myself in terms of if I made a mistake. Like I was a bit of a perfectionist, and the being a perfectionist has a lot of knock-on consequences because
Yeah,
it makes you more anxious for one. It makes you more risk averse. It makes you more hesitant to try things that you're not comfortable with. So
yeah,
it restricts you a lot. And I kind of just reached a point where I was like, this is stupid. Like,
yeah,
I'm not expecting perfection from everybody else. So why
yeah,
am I doing that to myself? And so I kind of corrected it by saying, I changed the metric that I judge myself on is did I try and am I learning? You know, what was my intention? Am I sincere in my intent? And then if I make a mistake, regardless of what anyone else's response is, I'm like, it's okay. I know what I'm doing. I'm trying. Like
yeah,
once is a mistake though. And if you do it again and again, like that's a behavioral pattern and you have to change that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just being really, really honest with yourself about what's your intentions, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And tell me, what do you classify a bad habit? I mean,
Mm,
here you obviously classified a bad habit as one where your behavior affects how other people feel, right?
yeah.
What would another classification for you be in terms of bad habits?
What is the impact of the habit? That's what I would say. What is the impact for you and for the people around you? Is it moving you forward on towards your goals or is it moving you backward? Everyone knows what a bad habit is, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and just the severity of it is driven by the impact. It's like
yeah,
biting your nails is a bad habit, but it doesn't really hurt anybody. Like it's
yeah,
disgusting, but
yeah,
it's not like you're making the world a worse place. But like
100%.
having a habit of constantly blaming people when anything goes wrong. That's a habit,
Yeah,
and that's a bad.
yeah, yeah,
As soon as something
yeah,
goes wrong, you have to blame someone or you use it as an excuse to be angry or upset. Like that's a bad habit.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
has
yeah.
real consequences, you know.
So well said. I guess that also speaks to like things like anger management, right?
Emotional
Or
regulation.
emotional regulation. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a good way to look at it, right? Because I mean, you've changed my mindset, maybe because I'm very genuinely aware of my surroundings. I've never looked at a bad habit as being how I behave. I've always looked at a bad habit as something that affects my ability to move forward, right? Which is to an extent actually a bit selfish, right?
Sure.
Um, because yeah, like you said, habits are meant to advance and make an impact not only on you but those around you.
Yeah,
So I
like
like how you've broken that down, and I'm gonna jot it down for myself as well.
emotional regulation. is one of the best gifts you can give to yourself and everyone around you. Just creating a safe space for people where they don't feel you're gonna freaking lose your shit every 5 minutes
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Especially as a parent. Like imagine now you have two kids. They want to feel safe around their dad. And how
Yeah.
do you make them
100%.
feel safe? By projecting stability to them.
Yeah.
This
100%.
image of like, I'm like an oak tree, the storm
Yeah.
can rage around me, but I will
Yeah.
stay like this. You know what I mean?
100%. So I have a question for you based on emotional regulation, right? Maybe this is more selfish because it's more about myself.
Yeah.
But generally, I never get angry. My emotion is always the same. Very
Yeah.
few people have seen me upset or overexpress myself when
Yeah.
it comes to a negative emotion, right? Is that considered emotional regulation or is that just my personality? And is that healthy for my environment around me, right? Because like I said, even if something sad happens or something bad happens,
Yeah.
I'm still okay. I express it to be okay.
Sure. Look, by definition, emotional regulation is regulating what you feel. If you feel nothing, then you're not regulating because there's nothing there. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you're not saying like you're numb and you don't feel anything. It's
Yeah.
just your response to it is consistent. So that's a
Yeah.
choice that you're making. And because you're choosing, that is emotional regulation. But like,
So well said.
yeah, the way I intellectualize it, and it's how I learned it the first time, it's you feel, you acknowledge the feeling, and then you make a choice of how you will respond to that feeling based off of
Yeah.
your value system instead of
100%.
making a choice or not even making a choice instead of reacting impulsively. So we spoke the other day when we had an interview with Keegan Stokey. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. It's really epic. um we spoke about trauma and your inner child, right? So
Mm-hmm.
navigating your inner child has a lot to do with emotional regulation because
Mm-hmm.
when you respond instinctually or impulsively, more often than not, it's your inner child that's now responding on your behalf and
Mm-hmm.
it's doing it from a trauma-based response. So that's not emotional regulation. Regulation is you make the choice as an adult where you say, regardless of what happens, I will
Yeah.
choose how I respond.
Yeah. I like that. I think you've explained it to me, right? And I think that's probably what I'm doing. Because
Yeah.
generally I do feel, right? But I always say it is what it is.
Yes.
This is life. This
Yeah.
is life. And I think you always hear me say it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Um,
I say that
but
a lot as well.
yeah, there's nothing I can do about it. And the best way to go about handling this is to be positive. I
Exactly.
think positivity will take you out of any situation.
Yeah.
Choosing to respond optimistically will take you out of any situation in life.
And I'll ask you a question. Were you always like this? Was this something you picked up as you matured into an
Yeah.
adult?
So growing up when I was young, I was very low on accountability, extremely low on accountability. And I always used to blame when things didn't work out up until the age of like, I would say it was extreme between the ages of 8 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then my parents sent me to boarding school
Yeah.
where there's no blaming, right?
Yeah.
Not that it was hardcore or anything like that, but I was on my own. I couldn't blame my mom and my dad because they didn't help me with my homework. I couldn't blame anyone for anything. I just kind of had to start doing stuff on my own, making my own bed,
Right.
packing my own food, doing my own homework. And that just kind of made me realize that like life is about how you treat yourself, right? If you blame others, that means you don't treat yourself well. And I just started treating myself accordingly. I started treating myself well, started feeding myself happy thoughts, and I stopped looking for someone to blame when things went wrong. And through that, managed to develop this character that I now have that I hope is, strong enough for me to continue like this throughout the rest of my life. But I consciously focus on how I can help myself. And even when things go wrong, I look at myself first to see and assess what part did I play in this going wrong and what can I do to improve going forward.
Well said.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's the
So yeah,
essence
but that's a
of being a proactive person,
yeah, yeah,
focusing on the controllables.
yeah. And I think it also increases your overall ability to be responsible, right?
Yeah,
Because like I think like this, I've played many leadership roles in my life, official and unofficial, right? So official leadership positions are where you get assigned the
yeah,
responsibility of leading.
yeah,
And then there's an unofficial leader where you are actually leading people on behalf of the official leader.
yeah.
So I've played a lot of those in my life. So like I was never a prefect in high school and stuff like that. But like
Same.
yeah, but like I was very aligned with the prefects and I knew that I had a good following friends and stuff. So I'd do my bit to influence accordingly,
Yeah.
um, and play my part. So I just think it starts with you assessing yourself and then through that seeing what you can do to better the lives of others through how you bettered yourself.
I think this is such a great place for us to talk about giving advice to young men, especially teenagers, because you're speaking literally this experience yourself. So I would
Yeah,
ask you, if you were speaking to a group of young gentlemen who were in the 13 to 18 range,
yeah,
what kind of advice would you give them? Because it's a period of your life where shit is so confusing, you know.
yeah,
A lot of the times you're so insecure, you're so desperate for approval or kind of affirmation or acceptance. So I guess the advice would be great for kids at that time of their lives.
yeah, yeah. Sure. For me, I would say don't pick your friends based on how well they're doing or what they're achieving in school because everyone develops at different rates.
Mm,
So like with me, I'm not gonna mention people's names, but I had like friends who bad at sport. I was brilliant at sports. I had friends who were great at academics. I wasn't the biggest academic. I had friends who came from extremely wealthy homes, but I also had friends who were being sent to school just over the line where they didn't have anything else. And I had friends from different cultures, right? So I think exploring the basis of your friendship with as many people as possible is one of the biggest advantages you can give yourself because that gives you access to their world and their perspectives and their challenges. And then makes you realize how blessed you are, right? Because in life, there's always someone worse off.
yep.
There's always someone worse off. No
Yep.
matter how bad your life can be, there's always someone worse off. And then there's also always someone better off. So you're able to draw inspiration and also draw hope, but also draw gratitude for your situation in comparison to someone else. So that
100%.
for me, that would be the best advice because I think in schools, you tend to click with what you are.
Yes,
And through that, you become blinded of the real world.
that's great
And
advice.
your and yourself, what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self or to a high school kid?
You know, I'm gonna steal from what you were sharing just now. I would say accountability. No one is gonna come save you. No one is gonna come save you. Your parents can't save you. Your teachers, your friends, they can't save you. You have to save yourself. And when I say save yourself, I just mean like you need to take responsibility for your own life.
Yeah,
And I know, I can't speak about what girls need at that age, but I can
yeah,
speak about what boys need at that age. They need responsibility because responsibility gives them ability, it gives them confidence, it gives them experience, it gives them maturity and wisdom. So the earlier they can get responsibility, the better. Obviously, within a healthy bracket.
yeah,
But even for those kids that are coming from unfortunate circumstances, this is even more important for them to understand this. You have to save yourself.
yeah,
And the world helps people who help themselves. That's
yeah,
always how it is. No one's going to generate momentum for you, but once you generated your own momentum, there's lots of people along the way that'll help you accelerate.
yeah,
So that first initial bit of generating that momentum is the hardest part because
yeah.
you have to do it by yourself.
Right,
So
right.
That's the
Wow.
first one. The
Wow.
second one that I would say is try your best to figure yourself out in terms of who you are and what you like and what you don't like, because it's going to give you a lot of clarity about the decisions you're going to make further along down the road, especially what you were just saying now about who you
Yeah.
want to spend time with, what do you want to
Yeah.
learn.
100%.
Most people only really start figuring that stuff out in their 20s. So it's a massive competitive advantage if you can just figure out what you like at a young age. You know, like there's a guy, we've actually spoken about him before, um, that was interviewed by Neil Bester on the Breaking Barriers podcast, which is a great podcast, by the way, to everybody who's listening, who discovered a passion for video games when he was a young man, and I think when he was 9 or something, and now he makes video games for a living. And
Crazy.
obviously, it takes a long time to get the skill that you need to be able to do that. But the point is, because he figured it out at a young age, that's how he became who he was. Mr. Beast from YouTube.
Yeah.
Mr. Beast fell in love with YouTube videos as a 12-year-old, and by 20, he had millions of subscribers, you know.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
what I say to the kids, like, this is a big competitive advantage. Figure out what you
Yeah.
like, what you don't like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so well said, right? Like, I mean, one of my favorite quotes, I actually have it on the back of my door in my office, is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he says that the world always makes way for the man who looks like he knows where he's going.
Mm.
And like, I think we can both attest to that, right? I can use myself. I mean, I've always known where I'm going, but I've never known how I'm going to get there, right? But because I kind of know where I'm
Yeah,
going, the world puts people in your life, right? That like form as like stepping stones and people that guide you and push you in the right direction. Purely because you're showing the intent to get to a specific destination
100.
and walk a certain journey. But if you don't show and express the fact that you want to get to a certain point, then how is the world going to provide for you? How?
100%. Dude, this
You
is
know?
a great point. Such a great point.
Yeah. So I just like how you summed that up, right? It's about taking responsibility and having the courage to take the first step to show the world that you know where you're going. Because I think you show yourself that you know you where you're going by showing the world that you know where you're going.
Yeah. And also, like, when you figure out what you want, you will also start to realize that you are basically limitless in your potential.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you have no idea how far you can go. And it's
yeah,
incredible what you can accomplish. So, but no one's gonna do it for you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's just the truth. And that's
yeah,
that's fine, because just as hard as it is for you, it's also super hard for everybody else. So
yeah,
once you've broken that initial step, now you know everyone else has to
yeah.
now go do what you did. And that's a
100%,
competitive advantage, you know. So
100%. And also, like, I like how you said that, right? Like, it's hard, right? And I think once you take that first step, you also realize that you cannot do it on your own,
yeah,
right? But the willingness to do it alone is what attracts people to you to assist you.
exactly. Exactly.
And doing it alone is great. And thinking you can do it alone is a failure. But just showing the intention to want to do it is like a pull factor for people to come to you, right? And doing it in such a way that they can also benefit too, I think is a very integral part of success. Because I think the way that the world is now constructed is it's very social and it's mutual. It's not like the olden day where a man would go hunt on his own, take the meat back home on its own. Capitalism isn't structured like that.
Yeah,
You go for a goal, you take others with you, and you share
exactly.
the spoils when you get to the destination.
And that's actually a very interesting point that you just raised there, because I think, you know, if I can speak about Thrive and Survive, you know, I did Thrive and Survive newsletters for a whole year before we did this podcast, right?
I remember.
And the confidence it gave me to know that I did a year's worth of this thing without missing anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I needed to do that to be the partner that I am to you today,
yeah,
who shows up when I say I will. I needed to
yeah.
do that because I needed to show up for myself first before I show
100%.
up for you. And
100%.
like what one of the reasons, you can speak to this, but like this is my perspective. I had the authority to be like, hey T, I think we should do a podcast together. And you took me seriously
Yeah,
because
bro.
I did this thing for a year. So I'm
100%.
serious. I'm not here to mess around. So
100%. 100%. And you've hit the nail on the head, right? That's the pull factor I mentioned earlier. When you show the world that you know where you're going,
yeah,
and that was subconscious, right? I believe that was gravitas. That was the universe that just did that, right? People naturally will gravitate towards your mission
yes,
and help you get to the destination, right? I'm just one of many more that will gravitate towards this mission, right? That will help you get towards this end goal that you're walking towards. But the reality is that you showed yourself that you know where you're going, showed the world. And as you continue through all the times, good times and bad times, more and more people will gravitate until you have this pyramid where everyone's benefiting from your journey. So,
100%.
so well said. And also, like, I must give you kudos for walking that journey because it's a dark one, right? The first one, when you're alone, is very dark
Yeah,
because you're doing something for nothing in return.
yeah,
Um, the
yeah,
returns are like so far-fetched that you actually sometimes even doubt yourself, right? But that's where passion comes in.
yes,
That's where persistence comes in. And that's where self-belief really plays a big role into your
yeah,
daily routine. So
yeah.
yeah, I drew a lot of inspiration from that and I gravitate towards people who work today for tomorrow.
Thanks, bro.
Because in today's society, your returns don't come back immediately, unfortunately.
Well, if they do, they're not gonna last. That's
Yeah.
that's
Easy come, easy go.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, so I've touched on my points from my side. Do you have any
Yeah.
other questions you want to run?
Yeah. I think another topic that I just want us to address is also obviously we've spoken about this before, but just dealing with setbacks,
Mm,
and taking losses, I think there's many different ways we can look at dealing with setbacks, but from you, I just want to know what the benefit of losing is based on your perspective, because I think in society we look at losing as a bad thing, right?
yeah.
But there's benefits to losing, there's benefits to failing. In your terms, what would you say the benefits to failure are?
Well, let me ask you a rhetorical question. How much do you learn when you win? Not a lot, because if you win, you don't see any need to correct or change. And also, you don't know if it was a lucky win or if it's a
Mm,
sustainable, repeatable pattern.
mm,
Whereas with a
mm,
loss, it always forces you to look and be like, what did I do wrong? How did this happen?
yeah.
And that's the gift of loss. And I don't believe in making it a habit though,
Yeah,
because
100%.
you definitely don't want to be losing all the time. But what I would say is setbacks and losses are necessary byproduct of worthy goals. If you are not losing, then you're not choosing goals that are big enough to challenge you. And that is the nature of the game. It's like if you have a
Wow.
big goal, you will lose, you will make mistakes and suffer setbacks. And I've heard this quote, I think it was by Matt Rife, the comedian, where he said, people don't fail, they quit. And I agree with that. If you just stick to something long enough and you can ride the waves of the setbacks, then it's very hard to stop you from succeeding.
Mm, mm, mm. Shucks, so well said. I don't think you could have said it any better than that.
Nice.
And, just to add on to some of your points there, I think failure is just as good as winning. Obviously, when you win, you don't learn as much.
Yeah,
But I think people win because of persisting through failure, and people win because they failed so many times and taken the lessons from their failures, which has resulted in this one win. So
yeah,
I always say, for every 8 failures, 2 wins. We only show the wins,
yeah,
right? And that's just the reality of how life is. People don't celebrate the failures. But at the end of the day, you reap more from the hard times in life than you do from the good times.
agreed.
However, the bad times feed 20% of your success.
Yes.
80% will always be tough, but the 20% ends up being worth more than the 80% that you suffered purely because of the returns of all the lessons that you would have gained over time.
Yeah.
So I think that's a brilliant way to end this session. Like I said, I think you hit that answer. You nailed it in the coffin. I don't think we can top that
Thank
going
you.
forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, always great to share such great wisdom with you. And yeah, like I said, looking forward to many more episodes with you, Alex. It's really enlightening.
It's a privilege, man. Honestly. And I will say, I am so grateful to have you along for the journey. It's so much better doing it with a partner than it is doing it alone. So,
Yeah,
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 very grateful for you. And to the audience, guys, like and subscribe. Come
yeah.
on, join the family. We want you,
Yeah,
we need you. And yeah, if anyone has any suggestions for topics that they want us to discuss, just drop a comment below and we will check it, we will read it, and we'll take
yeah.
it into account in our next episode. But yeah, that's all from us, guys. Hope you have a great weekend and we'll see you soon.
Perfect. Cheers, guys.